Hey there, Eurus here, and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the amazing humans from the community world about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Jeff Bull, a Star Wars tech and food geek, a baker, a hobby hopper, and a great community expert who's also a technology storyteller. So, hello, Jeff.
Hey Yuri, how's it going?
Finally, it's been a long time since we've met between two water coolers, having some
hmm
conversations here and there, but here we are. Finally, I will be able to ask all those questions I wanted to ask you. So let's start with the first. So your Instagram and TikTok accounts handle is JB the Jedi. So how do you know that you are a Jedi? Why not a Sith?
Oh, good question. I mostly I did it because it rhymed a little bit better than JB the Sith. So I kind of went JB the Jedi, and I was trying to find something better than what I used to use. And on TikTok I used to do a lot more Star Wars content. I've kind of tapered off just because I've been busy in life and stuff like that. But I think I identify probably more with Jedi because of the idea of balance or always striving for balance. And like I've been working on my own mental health now for a few years. I was diagnosed with anxiety a couple of years ago and ADHD earlier this year. So like being neurospicy, it's like always trying to figure out how do you I don't really balance is probably the wrong word, but sort of create a rhythm in your life so that things can just work for you because balance is almost impossible, but always trying to find kind of a rhythm. And when I came up with the handle, not that I was trying to think about this too much, but when I came up with that idea and I was doing more content, I'm like I think I self-identify more with a Jedi because I feel like in that universe of characters and storytelling, the Jedi at their best moments are always really trying to strive for how to self-improve, how to find a balance in their own lives and all that type of stuff. Whereas the Sith is all about chaos. It's all about selfishness and chaos, and that's what they want. So yeah, I think that's probably why I identify a little bit more. And I found that I just enjoyed making when I was learning to sew and trying to make cosplay for myself. The Jedi robes I liked better because I could make everything in all black, or I could do some tones of brown. Like I kind of like that idea. That was really it.
Yeah, it's working. It also sounds like you are kind of recovering from the dark side.
I think everyone is a little bit, right? Well, the dark side's always kind of right there. You're always tempted by letting fear and anger and hatred like drive you to make a decision or do something. And it's always the like knowing that that's there, but stopping yourself from letting that be the case. So I think all of us are battling a little against the dark side in our own way.
What helps you to battle the dark side the most?
Oh, that is a really good question. For me, it's usually talking to friends, talking to my partner, talking to whoever it is. I personally, this isn't the same for everyone, but for me, I need to process whatever's going on with me out loud with somebody. I see a therapist on a regular basis, and that's really helpful because you just need to be able to say something out. So for me, I need to get something out of not living rent free in my brain and get it out and someone else hear it and either go like, oh, Jeff, no, 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 that's, oh, cool. Okay. Thank you for seeing that. I wasn't seeing that. Or no, Jeff, I understand. Um, I also find, and what I've been trying to practice more and more is if I'm in a meeting or if I'm in a situation talking with somebody, trying to not just respond in the moment and just take a breath and let myself think about it for a little while and let the other person talk for a bit. And whatever I was thinking, kind of let it simmer. My therapist called it, she gave me a workbook for this a while ago, and she called it surfing the urge. And
Hmm.
it was the idea that like when you have ADHD specifically, but really anybody, when you have the urge to do something, it could be snack on something you want to snack on, or go do an activity you don't want to do, or respond to somebody in a situation where you're like, maybe I shouldn't respond. It's like this curve, almost like a wave. And when you're at the top of that urge, at the top of that wave, everything feels really intense and you want to do it. But if you she's like, surf the urge. If you just let it play out for a little while, the urge starts to diminish over a period of time. Sometimes it's depending on certain things, it can take a while, days, weeks. But in situations where you're talking with somebody, whatever else, it can curve off. It can taper off pretty quick. And I've been trying to really practice that personally, and that helps me a lot not react as much to things because almost always when I react, it comes from a place of defensiveness or anger or whatever else. So that's like a little more existential than you were probably asking, but that's how I see myself trying to kind of keep the dark side a little bit at bay.
Yeah, at least on like on a sunny days or something. Sometimes dark side is coming back. So yeah, it's
Sure.
I
I
feel
mean,
like it's a
wintertime is
human
almost here.
nature.
It's gonna start getting, gray and cloudy and rainy. We'll be indoors every day. So there's that. We'll have to work with that.
How do you feel about laughs?
About what?
Laughing with people.
Oh my God. It's essential. Like I almost thrive on it. If I'm not laughing or smiling, I find myself to be almost, I don't say sad, but I feel in a rut. So even sometimes sitting at home at night, my wife and I will sit back and watch comedians on Netflix or whatever. Just pick a random stand-up comedian just to laugh for a while. It's laughing is this like super cathartic exercise we can all do, and it almost breaks apart the idea of thoughts versus thinking, and it lets you stop um, thinking for a minute and just let thoughts play out. So when you laugh, you stop trying to do anything or trying to think about a topic, and you laugh and you just do. It's just something happens. It's an emotion. You feel it, and it almost washes out anything else that was in your brain, which can be a really cool reset in the moment. And you don't realize it until after it happens. You're almost like, wait, what was I talking about? You take a break for a second. You're like, I don't remember where I was at 30 seconds ago because I just laughed really hard and it just kind of all went away. So I think the more the people can do that and put themselves in those situations where they can have a good laugh or they can laugh at something, laugh at a comedian, whatever it is, it can really help your brain just take a nice little reset, even for a couple of seconds.
You know why I asked? Because like previously when I had in some kind of situation when, like was nerves involved and stuff, like I was all like kind of trying arguing with people and stuff. And then I learned that just, kind of like stepping aside for a second and just smiling a little, saying some kind of a small joke or something like that. And it helps so much. It helps so much to deal with all those situations while we are talking about dark sides. And I'm like, that sounds that I'm trying personally, like when my kid is pissing me off, I'm like, you'll be so grounded. But then at the moment, I'll just laugh a little, and it's fun because my wife recently showed me some kind of meme where it's like small children, they're so cute and nice as these kittens. And then there is this crazy fox. Like you can, I can't explain it, but there is a photo of this fox sitting like in this way. And I was like, this is a teenager. I was like, oh, yeah, makes so much sense. And every time my kid is acting like in this crazy weird way, it just reminds me of this fox, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's foxy stuff. Okay.
There's a there's a meme I've seen on TikTok where it's something very similar to that, where it's like you got a new kitten and it's like 0 to 7 months, and then the kitten's like, oh, cuddly and rolling around, and then it's like 7 months to 24 months and the cat's like just bouncing off the walls everywhere. And the several of them have been people who have taken that and then like having a kid 0 to 3. I'm like, oh no, that's exactly what that's like. It's like, I love my son, he's almost 9 years old, I adore him, but yes, it is exactly like that. Like it's not one doesn't diminish the other, but it's also like that is exactly what that's 100% what that's like.
How many lightsaber battles did you have?
In general? Oh my gosh. I mean, it's hard to count because you can only see, what side are they on? This side. I only have 2 lightsabers up here. I do have a third lightsaber in the closet.
Oh, okay.
So I've had a few of this, and my son has a couple small lightsabers we've made together. But that doesn't count all the cardboard tube lightsabers as kids, because when we were all kids, there wasn't, you couldn't buy a lightsaber from some Star Wars store or someplace. So when mom would finish wrapping a gift or whatever, and there's the cardboard tube left over when you're done, oh yeah, I mean, put tape on it, spray paint it, whatever, there's your lightsaber. Oh my god. I would say the number is uncountable. So many lightsaber battles as a kid. As an adult, a few, I would say. A few, mostly with my son, but I've had a few as adults. It's very fun. I enjoy it.
I was curious who were your nemesis in those battles, and I feel like it's mostly your son nowadays.
Yes, it is mostly my son nowadays. Usually because he jumps out from around the corner and is like swinging his lightsaber at me. I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta find one.
What is the difference between dad jokes and Star Wars jokes?
Nothing. They're the same thing. They're exactly the same thing. Like, here's one for you. Where did Luke get his cybernetic hand? The secondhand store. It's the only one I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, they're the same thing. They're just insert different words into the Mad Libs of that type of comedy. It's the same thing.
That's how it's for now. I know. Okay, now I know. I didn't know. That's why I was curious. But now I know. Thank you very much for enlightening me. And
you are welcome.
Let's start from the beginning. So tell me about your parents. Who are they?
They're people.
Exactly.
They live in. So I live in California in the United States, and I grew up in Southern California. So, like most people would think Los Angeles. I grew up in an area called Long Beach, which is just another city in the same general area as Los Angeles. It doesn't really matter, but kind of in there. most people think beaches and things like that, which we did have. I didn't live near a beach necessarily, but my parents still live there. So the house that I grew up in from age like 12 years old until I moved out in my 20s, my parents still live there. So 30 something years, they're still in that house. Um, my dad worked for an aerospace company for almost his entire career, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And yeah, they're super active people, and they're still doing their thing down there. We were down for their birthday and my mom's birthday. I think she I'm not going to quote ages because I can't remember exact ages, but we were down there for my mom's birthday, and they're still super duper active in retirement, and yeah, going strong.
How do you feel when you are coming back to the home where you were growing up?
It's a good question, and it's a complicated question. I enjoy it because there's a familiarity there and like a lot of memories. But also there is and hopefully my parents will never hear me say this because they would probably take offense to it, and I don't mean it this way, but there's almost a sense of going backward.
Hmm.
Like I do enjoy the area, and there's a lot of places I like checking out while we're there. The places I would go to when I was in high school or in college years, restaurants and stuff that I used to love, and we go there those places periodically. But it always, or more and more lately, the longer I've been away from home, and it's been 20 something years since I've been moved out. It feels like going backward. Like I've I don't want to say given up, but it
Hmm.
feels like a step backward in life rather than a step forward. And so whenever we go down and visit, oftentimes my wife and I will grab my son and we'll go to areas of Long Beach or areas of cities that I grew up, but that I never spent time in. And my wife is a foodie, so she'll make lists on Instagram or other places and find all kinds of really fun restaurants or coffee shops, breweries, things like that that are in areas that I may have been by, but they weren't there or I never spent time there. And we'll find these places. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I never know this was here? It's like some little restaurant tucked in between two houses in the middle of a neighborhood someplace, and turns out to have like the best food or the best coffee. And that makes it really, really fun because then it's like discovering these new areas of the place that I grew up in that either weren't there or were, and I just had no idea. And that makes it really enjoyable. But if we don't do that and we're just hanging out with the family and stuff, it's not my family, but it's just kind of the being in the area. It just feels a little going backward. And I always look really forward to coming back home.
It's fun when I was growing up with my grandparents, and every time that I visit them, so my grandfather is already away, there is still my grandmother, and I'm still, when I'm visiting them, I always go to a garage because, there were a lot of tools, and I remember all these tools, and I don't know why, but I just, even though my grandfather is already not with us, I'm just coming there, I'm just checking the tools, I'm trying to do something with them. I don't know how it works. So I'm curious, when you're coming back to your home, is there a room or a thing that you are rediscovering once again all the time?
Oh, that's a really good question. Almost the whole house. So much of the house is the same, but a large amount of it has changed. It's been a long time since I grew up there. We spend most of the time between the backyard and I guess you'd call it the living room. I don't know, whatever the room is, everyone kind of sits in the house. And both that living room has changed over many times. It still basically looks the same. Their backyard is completely different than when I grew up there. And they did that probably 10, 15 years ago. They gutted it and had a whole new, like I gave it a whole facelift, it looked beautiful, but it's still odd because my parents' house is set up in a way where it's kind of strange. The house was built, like added onto multiple times since it was built in the 50s by people who owned it long before my family owned it. And when you walk up to the house, there's a front door, which is the common entrance, but no one in our family or friends ever uses it. You go through the side gate to the backyard, and there's a back door, and that's what everyone's used since I grew up there. And there's a second back door, like at the back of the house, and both just exit into the backyard. But so whenever we walk up to the back gate and walk into the backyard, that's familiar. This is how we go in the house. This is how we walk in. But then every time you walk in, my mom has moved something or something has changed. And so it's always just different. So it's like it's familiar yet very different. And so it's almost this like dichotomy that I can't get out of my brain. There's enough there that I remember from being a kid, but just as much, if not more, that has changed. So it's always kind of like, where am I to a degree? I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what it is. My dad's garage largely looks the same as it did 15, 17 years ago. Because once my dad builds something and sets it in place, it's just there. Unless he needs to change it, he doesn't change it, which there's a rationality to that, but also you walk in the garage and all of his woodworking equipment and all his fishing gear and all this other stuff that he does on a regular basis is always in the same place. It's always put away the same way. So it's always neat and clean in exactly the same way. So there's a nostalgia there, but there's also kind of a, oh, it's like looking at a museum, like, yeah, this is always the same. Don't touch the things.
If it works, doesn't don't touch it. So
I mean, there's a good logic to that.
totally. And tell me about yourself. What is the first memory of your childhood that comes to your mind right now?
Oh my gosh. Uh, Probably going to the beach with my mom and sister. So the first area that I grew up in when I was in Southern California is not the place where my parents live now. It's a different area, a little closer to the actual city of Los Angeles, but very near, relatively near some beaches. And so during the summer months when we weren't in school, or even when we were really young, my mom would, because she was stay-at-home mom, so the kids were at home, she would take my sister and I, my sister's 2 years younger, to the beach. And usually during the week, there's nobody that, anybody who's there is just running, whatever else. So she'd take these two kids to the beach and building sandcastles. And I'm glad you asked this. I actually showed my son this when we were down the last time. We went to a coffee shop in an area. Just the three of us walked out on the beach. And I'm like, hey, dude, let's go hunt for some sand crabs. And he's like, what's a sand crab? At first, he's like, Dad, I don't want to get pinched. I'm like, no, 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 it's not that kind of crab. I can remember when I was a kid, you would walk out to the beach. And as the water came up and kind of just a little bit of water then kind of receded from the beach, you would see these little bubbles in the sand. And if you just scooped your hand down there and kind of came back up, you'd have a little, like, they call it a sand crab. I don't know if it's actually a crab, but it's just like a little bug looking thing. They don't bite. They
Yeah.
don't do anything. They more tickle your hand than anything else. And they're just like freaking out because they just want to get back in the sand. But you could see these little bubbles everywhere. And as kids, we would giggle and laugh because you just scoop your hand in and reach up and you'd be like, oh, look, I have these two little crabs here running around trying to figure out what to do. And so when we were there this last time, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this.
Hmm.
My son's name is Rye. I'm like, let me show you. And I showed it to him, and I thought he was going to really be uncomfortable with it, but within a few minutes, he was like, Dad, we can't leave. We've got to find more sand crabs. It was super cool.
How many of them did you find that day?
Oh gosh, a dozen or more. But like the moment you put them back down, like if they're in your hand, the moment you put them on the sand, they instantly dig themselves right back in the sand again, and they're just gone. So you look at one and you just put it right. They're freaking out, so you put them right back. Like I don't want to hold on to you. You're probably like traumatized at this point, little buggy. Put you back in the sand.
Yeah, yeah, better not traumatize bugs. But I feel like nowadays kids are more traumatized by bugs than bugs themselves. Because, like I remember like hunting spiders and like hunting all these bugs and playing with ants and stuff. And like my kid is like, yeah, no, I won't touch it.
I'm not touching that. Why would you think I'd want to play with that? When I
Yeah.
was like, when I was, I don't remember how old we were. My grandparents had a place. You'd have to kind of know the geography of Southern California, excuse me, to know this. But if you drive on a particular freeway or highway east out of this, Southern California, you actually could just drive straight across the entire country. There's a highway that runs from East Coast to West Coast called or Interstate 10 that just runs the whole way. So you literally could drive all the way from California to Florida on that road if you wanted. But if you leave California and you drive, or you LA and you drive east, you would drive over to Arizona into Phoenix. And on the way there, it's a lot of desert, like high desert. And there's a city, I forget the name of it. My grandfather bought a bit of property, a few acres in the middle of the desert, basically. This is sounding very strange already. But like in the middle of the desert by some hills, and built a cabin, like a wood cabin. And the whole point was like family vacations out there. There was no power, there was no electricity, there's no running water. The bathroom was very classic, like porta potty. Like he built a privy basically out back. And so in order to heat yourself, you'd have to go get big jugs of water in town, propane to power up stoves and stuff like that. And the idea was like camping, but a little bit better than just straight camping. And so we'd go out there a few times a year. And I remember this. My grandfather left a bird cage, like an old used bird cage out. And so my dad and I and my sister would go out, and we would catch lizards. We would just catch lizards everywhere in the desert, little lizards, put them in the cage. And I don't know the actual name, but we called them a horned toad. It's a lizard with all these little spikes on them. They don't hurt or anything, and they don't bite. But they're a little bit bigger and bulkier. And we would take them all and put them in this bird cage. just for anybody hearing this going, oh my gosh, that's terrible. No, no, for like a couple of minutes. Like it was enough to say, look, we're catching them, we're putting them there. And then shortly after, my dad would just open the cage and all the lizards and stuff would just leave. We weren't doing anything with them, but I can remember, speaking of catching bugs or other scaly, strange things, as a kid, I was like, lizards, bugs, I'll pick it all up. Now I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
get that
Yeah.
away from me. My
You
son will
never.
want to go to a local like animal sanctuary museum, and they have like a touch area where you can touch certain bugs and beetles. He's like, come on, Dad. I'm like, that is not happening. Like, you go ahead, dude. I am not touching any of that stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like, when we were kids, we were much more not safe, I would say, kind of like in a way that whatever, what can
Safety was
happen with
a
me?
safety
Like,
was more of a concept than a rule when we were
yeah,
kids.
I'm walking on the edge of this high building.
Oh,
Yeah, what
totally.
can happen? Yeah, like nothing. So
100%.
yeah,
100%.
I'm so happy that my parents do not know about all the things that I've done when I was a kid, and it's so fun because I recently met my mom and I told her about the accident when I was hit by a car when driving a bicycle, and she was like, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell me?" I was like, "Yeah, I was afraid, that I would be grounded or something like that." So, and then
Yeah, no,
like
we're not.
30 years later, oh, by the way, I was hit by a car. So,
Yeah, we're not. I'm not having that. I mean, my mom is not going to hear me say things like that recorded. Sorry. Like, I'm not sharing. There's some things I'm just not going to share. Sorry.
tell me about the Live Every Day in April programs that you went through.
Ooh, LIDA, super fun. The first time I went through it, I think was actually right before the pandemic started or right about the time the pandemic started, somewhere in there. I don't remember where I learned about it, but there's a group on, you can follow her work online. It's livestreamingpros.com. I'm not advertising for it, just making a comment. Her name is Loria Petrucci. She's been around tech space and journalism and stuff for a very long time, and she runs this business like actually partly consulting, actually setting up studios for people in their homes and their podcasts and whatever else, but also teaching lots and lots of enablement for like live streaming and video making, whatever. And so she started this program way back then. And the whole purpose of it was to teach people how to do live streaming. If you
Hmm.
didn't want to actually live stream, it was fine. That wasn't like the requirement. It was more of a teach you through this program how to become comfortable on this camera, talking to people, being ad hoc, going live, and then also doing some of the production stuff, but primarily just the how to just hit the live button and start talking, like how to feel comfortable. So it's 30 days for the month of April, and it's evolved a lot since then. But at the time, it was like use whatever software you want, be on camera. And periodically, she would host a video thing every day. She would post a challenge. So you get an email saying, "Here's today's challenge," and you're added into a private Facebook group, and only people who have been like you just apply and you just get in. There's no real requirement to get in. Once you're in, there's things like no self promotion and a few other things like it's a safe space. Everyone's going to be safe here, etc. If anyone's not even a little bit, they're out. Like the point of this is to make everyone feel very comfortable that you can be open and transparent. And so every single day of of that challenge, or you're given an email with today's assignment, and at some point in that day for your time zone, you go live in the Facebook group or
Hmm.
on the Facebook in the Facebook page. You just go live, and people can comment and watch and like encourage each other, and you do your version of whatever the challenge was. So like one of the days is like tell me about your oldest memory. I'll use your example. Okay, and the idea is go live for like no more than 4 or 5 minutes at the most, couple of minutes. You just need to do it. And what helped for me was a couple of things. One, learning to just be comfortable on camera, like talking to a camera and not feeling strange about it, and just remembering that I'm like talking to like you and I are talking here, but even if I was going live by myself, reminding myself that I'm talking to one person, just pretend that I'm talking to one person on the other side of the camera, and it makes it feel more like a conversation with your audience. But actually, it was three things. The second thing was I met some really good people, and most of them and us, and we're still friends. I mean, we're all still friends, but some of us keep in touch, have met in person, because everyone was from all over the globe. So I have several friends who are I consider very close friends. We see each other maybe once a year, or every other year, but when we do, it's as if we've never been apart from each other. And then probably the third thing from there is just becoming comfortable. It actually helped me a lot with public speaking
Hmm.
and meeting people when I go to conferences and things, because it just in general helped me feel more comfortable being open and transparent about who I am and how I talk about those things. When I say things like I have ADHD or anxiety and here's therapy I go through, I've had some people say, wow, I'm surprised you would even say that out loud. I'm like, I recognize that a lot of people are not comfortable saying those sorts of things about themselves, but I find that if I'm willing to do it, then others hear it, and not that they're willing to do it too, but it makes them feel more comfortable that these are things they could be a part of, and they might feel a little bit more open to trying something new for themselves. And I think that's really, really valuable. And for me personally, going through a program like that, like, made all the difference in how I do public speaking, how I do my job, how I even like to behave as a person at work. I like, it's almost one of those things like when you re-listen to a book, or rewatch a movie. Every time you do, you're like, oh my gosh, I missed that the first time, or I didn't hear this thing the first time. Over the years, as I've thought back to that program, the first time I went through it, I'm like, wow, now I'm remembering something that happened and it's affecting me now, but I didn't realize it 2 years ago. And it's like, it's always like it's like this gift that just keeps giving, because I keep realizing something about myself that I didn't know before. So I encourage anyone who can do it. It's totally free. It's 100% free. And nowadays they don't even let you use software on your desktop. They require everyone to do all the live streams from their phones, because there was a time where people were doing these things and others were like, I just don't want to participate because I feel like I don't have the right gear or the right setup. And they're like, you know what? As moderators, a group were like, no, we're not doing that anymore. No one should feel like they can't participate. So they're like, no, everyone, no microphones, use whatever mobile device you have, and that's it. Because the point isn't this. The point is hitting the live button and talking for a bit and getting people to encourage you. That's the point. And so I actually really appreciated that, because it makes more people feel like they can be included rather than excluded.
You just showed me your phone and I saw some kind of reflection of Zelda. Am I right?
Oh yes, my son wanted me to do this. So my two screens, the one, actually they're both the same. The one on the right is a like a matte painted image of from Legend of Zelda, the Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, and the one on the left is from Breath of the Wild. So there's like a Lionel that Link is fighting on the left, and then on the right it's Link sitting on a cliff looking out over Hyrule from Tears of the Kingdom. So yes,
Did you finish both of those games?
both games. Yep, both games.
What? How much time did you
Oh,
spend on
so
it?
much time. So much time.
Oh my
I
God. Oh
think
my God.
my boss at the time, when I heard about Breath of the Wild, he said, Jeff, just be prepared to lose like 6 to 8 months of your life. I'm like, okay, sure, buddy, whatever. And then I started playing it, and like it feels like 9 months later I popped up and I'm like, wait, where am I? It's like it just consumes. So Tears of the Kingdom wasn't quite as bad because I kind of knew what I was getting into, but yeah, they're both super, super immersive games.
The fun thing that I finished Breath of the Wild, and the fun thing that uh, I was playing with my kids, so we defeated Ghana, so basically made like the main quest, let's
Mhm.
say. But then my kid was like, okay, whatever, we defeated him already like 2 times. Yeah, it's not interesting anymore. And I was like, oh, I will go and search for all the side quests that are in
Yes.
there, for all the shrines that are in. And I didn't know that you can really buy a house and you
Oh,
can
and
build a new village. And I was like, is it even possible that you can do this in the game? And I was like, but yeah, I was cheating a little bit. I don't go by myself through all the stuff. I Googled like where are the
oh,
shrines,
100%, dude. Oh,
where are
dude,
the
I do the
stuff.
same thing. I'm
Because
not
like, yeah, I was like,
I'm
no,
with you, dude.
no.
I'll go walk every ounce of the screen and find all the hidden things. I'm like, my brain doesn't have time for that. Tell me where they are, but I just want to experience them. Like, if you tell me where they are, the experience of them is super fun. In Tears of the Kingdom, you don't just get to build your own house. You literally get to construct your own home through blocks, and you can buy it and build a fully custom home. It's kind of cool. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm still on this journey. I'm still no. I'm like it's like this Tears of the Kingdom. Like go play in me, and I'm like, yep, no, no. I need my life. No, sorry, not now. Maybe later. So it's still waiting for me. And so you have a goal to help people bring their passions into whatever they do.
Mhm.
So how do you do it?
Oh my gosh, lots and lots of convincing. No, I'm joking. The and I'll kind of clarify a little bit what I mean by that. This is an old story, but I'll make it very short. My dad told me a long time ago. My uncle, his brother, who's like 3 or 4 years younger than him, um, owned he's a fisherman. He loves fishing. And it's not what he does professionally. It's just something he's passionate about. Goes fishing tons. And at one point in my aunt and uncle's life, they lived up in Washington State in California, or sorry, in the United States, and they bought a old tugboat, like a 90-foot long tugboat that would like tow big ships out of harbor, and they had it
Hmm.
converted into like with staterooms, and then they would rent it like or charter it up to Alaska to do big salmon fishing and halibut fishing and all that. So like 10, 15, maybe 20 people could charter the boat and take it up. They had a chef and they would do this. And my uncle would go on those trips many times, and he loved it. But my dad told me a story years later. And the short version is that in that conversation, my uncle told him, "Don't ever make your hobby your job, because he apparently, after a few years of doing that, my uncle was like, I just don't like fishing anymore." He recovered from that. He still fishes constantly, he loves it, but it really burnt him out on it because it became a job and not the thing he does for fun when he's wanting to have a good time. Sorry, Kitty wants to join. This is Sabine, a Star Wars name, by the way. And I've always remembered that, at least that one piece. And so when I say bring your passions into work, what I mean by that is kind of on your own personal journey of figuring out what you're passionate about, what makes you excited. I don't mean like necessarily one activity, like playing frisbee golf or playing pickleball, or, you know, baking bread at home, whatever. Those are hobbies and they're great, but what are the things about those hobbies or things you love getting into that are like your passions? Like for me, my passions are connecting with other people, talking with people, trying to help, like be a people leader, try to help people find their career path and what can I do for you, trying to figure out what really makes them tick so I can help them find the right things. And so what I try to encourage is, as you figure out and you're discovering what your passions are, bring what you are passionate about doing into the work that you do. So no matter what job you have or what role that you have, you can bring your own personal passions and shape the work that you do by your passions. So not to say, well, I love, baking bread. Somehow as a community leader, I'm going to make the job about baking bread. Well, no, but what is it that I like doing with that? I like the science. I like breaking it down, like understanding why the ingredients do the things that they do. Well, that passion for breaking those things down really translates well into like roles like a community leader or a DA manager or whatever else, where you need to break down data to try to understand things of why people interact the way that they do. There's a relationship there. And so for me, it's always like, whatever you're passionate about, try to craft the work that you do by taking your passions and how can I make this my own? How can I do the work in the way that I like doing it, but still get the outcomes everyone needs? Because I think what that makes it feel like is less of work and less of a job and more of a part of your life. Now, I know there are plenty of people out there who would hear that and go, Jeff, dude, I want separation. I have my life and I want work separation. And that's totally fine. That's a very healthy mindset to have. I just think that in the work that you do, if you can bring your passions with you into that work, it makes it feel a little bit less like work. Not that it needs to cross over and take over parts of your life, but it can make it feel less like a job and more like a career, in that kind of classic way of saying it. So it doesn't feel as cumbersome, it doesn't feel as burdensome. And then I think you can find better relationships and a healthier mental state in your work than if you just think about it as, I just do this work and then mentally clock out at the end of the day and I'm done. That's fine for a lot of people, but I think it's also really helpful if we're going to do these types of things for a long period of our life. If you can bring your passions with you, you can feel more like your human self in that work, and it feels less like work, if that makes sense.
How to understand that you're really passionate about something? I mean, like, not that you think you are passionate about something, or not that you're passionate about something because someone thinks that you have to be passionate about. How to understand, like, what is your real passion?
Oh, I think that is the question, and I honestly don't have a great answer for it. I can tell you what things I like. I think it's always a kind of this is probably a very patronizing sounding thing to say, and I apologize to anyone hearing this. I'm so sorry. It's a constant cycle of self-discovery to try to figure out what you are passionate about, and I think largely you can't do it alone. It requires you having or being able to open up to your friends or coworkers or mentors, whoever and whatever you have available in your life, so that you can have conversations with them and telling them things and get feedback from them. And your passions are going to change over time too. So it's like, it's not a static thing where you just learn like, I like public speaking. How do I bring that into my work? Cool. And it's just always going to be that way. It may not always be that way, and that's all right. I think as long as we're always trying to figure out what we're passionate about and whether we're right or wrong or not, it gives us a chance, it gives everyone a chance to just try something different and bring something different with them into what they do every day, which makes the work less tedious. But that's not really an answer to the question. And honestly, I don't have a great answer. A lot of it for me was being willing to have like mentors or coaches who I could talk to and say things like this and have them respond going, Jeff, that sounds ridiculous. Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that. Or no, Jeff, I actually think you're onto something because I see you in this way. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I think those conversations are what get you closer to the idea of, because it's less of I have found my passion. Cool, great. Now I don't think it's ever that binary. Like it's either this or this. I think it's you're just always trying to ask the question and try to understand, what am I passionate about? What do I like doing? And when you find something you think is that, bring it with you, do stuff with it. And at some point you might go, wow, that really was it. Other times, no, that's not really helping me. Okay, well, maybe you're not super passionate about that, but that's a good question to ask yourself anyway, and be like, well, if that's not it, what am I passionate about? And you're just always sort of trying to find those things. And I think it's not even sometimes the act of bringing the passions with you as much as it is trying to figure out what those passions are, because then you're always trying something different, and you're always trying to rethink. Sorry, random thought. If anyone is familiar with the author and the professor at the Wharton School, Adam Grant, it's part of the University of Pennsylvania. Um, he's an author, organizational psychologist, and one of the books he wrote a few years ago was called Think Again. Long, it's a great book. Read it if you get a chance. But there's this whole concept of rethinking things, not for the purpose of simply for the purpose of just changing your mind, but for the purpose of letting yourself go back to something you've thought about before and going, huh, why did I think that? Like, why did I feel that way? How did I come to that idea? And it's just this whole like mental process of allowing yourself to rethink things that you thought about before, or that you decided before, or what have you, simply for the purpose of doing it. Not because you need to change a mind or change an opinion, just to kind of reevaluate how you got to that place. And I think that that process can be really, really mentally healthy for us, and can help you get closer to the idea of what your actual passions are. Because you're just allowing yourself periodically to say, like, why did I do that? Like, do I really love that? I thought I was passionate about that. Is that really it? And you might go, yeah, no, actually that 100% is. Or you might just question it, and then that can lead you to something else.
And I also feel like that's a really great point that you told about mentors and talking to people, because sometimes you don't really know what you're good at, but people can see it. And, when they ask for feedback, or if they tell you something, oh, by the way, you're really doing this thing really good. And when people tell something like that to me, I'm like, yeah, no, I feel like everyone can do this. And then I learned that, oh, maybe it is that I can do, So yeah, I feel like it's super important to also talk to people and listen to people. And talking about hobbies and passions, so what was the latest hobby that you hopped off recently?
Oh, hopped off of?
Yes.
Oh, good question. I hopped off of. I hobby hop a lot because I'm neurodivergent. It was probably, and I'm kind of back to it now, is 3D printing. So it's my printer's
Okay.
right here. I stopped for a while for some technical reasons, but also because I got a little frustrated with how to make the settings work, and I couldn't get my brain into a place where I could just sit and study it. So I just left it for like 4 or 5 months, but I'm back to it now. I actually have been I've been printing up some planters that will be like mount in my window, for like indoor plants to hang in my window. But I kind of bounce back and forth. Oh, you know what? Sorry. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I hopped off of woodworking. I was doing that
Hmm.
for a while. And I got myself really into it. I wanted to just find a way to make things with my hands, just so I could occupy my time and maybe like listen to an audiobook or a really good podcast. Just saying, a really good podcast, and like do something with my hands and build things. And I don't remember why, but when I think we moved into this house, the interest kind of faded for me. Um, and now I'm kind of more into my 3D printing, which is, for anyone who 3D prints, is a lot more like set it and forget it. Once it starts, there's not much to do at that point. But I've started really getting back into sewing. So it's like I moved off of woodworking, but I'm back into sewing and like really learning how to use my sewing machine. I'm trying to make a cat bed for some friends right now for their 2 new cats that they just adopted. So, but yeah, I moved off of woodworking.
Talking about 3D printer, what do you usually print? I mean, except for Mandalorian helmet.
Oh, I've printed a Mandalorian helmet that's in the garage downstairs. There's a lightsaber. I don't think you can see it, but there's a lightsaber on one of these shelves above me. Oh, it's too high. It's out of frame. There's a big lightsaber from Star Wars: The High Republic that I printed up there. There's like 30 pieces that I had to glue together. It was kind of
Wow.
bananas. So it's a lot of stuff like that. You can't really see it down there, but I think it's right there, is a door jamb. I needed a
Hmm.
door stop for my door to keep the door open when the windows are going. So I printed door stops. I'm trying to find practical things to print. Like my wife is like, I need a stand to hold on my. She has 3 different pairs of eyeglasses. Great. I found a plan and I printed up a stand, a little cute rack, and I bought some cool filament so she could have a stand for her eyeglasses. I try to print like fun, practical things, but then sometimes I'm trying to just print just for fun. I printed my wife an articulating dragon. I found that you 3D print the whole thing and it's already connected. And when you take apart all the supports, it's already connected and the dragon is like articulating. This is really cool, like moving dragon that prints in one part. It is really rad.
Wow, I can imagine that. I'm curious, what was the longest time that you've kept your Tamagotchi R2D2 alive.
Oh my God. Longest, probably 6 hours.
Oh my God.
Probably 6 hours.
So long.
I don't think it's even that long. I am terrible at like remembering to go back and feed it, and it would just get really irritated with me, and it wanted me to clean out its motivator, and then I'm like, I don't want to clean your motivator. R2E. I'm like, I don't want to do that, and then he would be like, and I'm done. I'm like, I finally put it up on a shelf, and I'm like, okay, we're just gonna be done with that for now.
We're done. Just a cool thing. Yeah, like yeah, we're done. I can imagine that. I remember, my backstory with Tamagotchis, and they were usually dying when I was sleeping because like for some
Yes,
reason they wanted to poo or they wanted to eat in the middle of the night. I'm like,
I'm
I'm
not helping you.
sleeping.
Sorry, dude. I'm
God damn
asleep.
it.
You're all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, serve yourself. But yeah, well, for some reason they didn't do this. And I'm curious, how did you end up getting two sibling kittens instead of one, in addition to your senior cat?
Oh, this cat or the other two cats, you mean?
Yeah, I
Because the
mean, I
other
mean, like, how did you end up getting two instead of one?
Oh, we had during the pandemic, my son had been begging us for cats, or a new kitten, and we had two dogs, two small dogs, and a cat. All of them were probably 17, 18 years old that I'd had since they were all kittens and puppies. And we're like, we're not getting any new animals until and unless these well, not unless until these kitties have these animals have passed away. And they were all like, one of the dogs passed away at 20, the other one passed away at 19. So like they were all like, it was time. And then one Christmas we got him. We were going to adopt a cat for him. And my wife had been looking. We've been finding the kitties. And we're like, okay, we're excited to do this. But then my wife contacted the Humane Society, and she's like, oh, we found this one cat. His name is Sunny. Super adorable. We would love it. And when she called them and talked and made an appointment for us to go down and meet the cats because you couldn't just go in at any time. And she's like, the person we talked to says, well, hey, just so you know, they're like, do you have any other animals? Like, yeah, we have one other cat. She's older. And they're like, okay, our recommendation would be to get two cats then so that your new kitten has somebody to play with because the older cat's not going to want to interact with the young cat. And it was very true. When we got the cat, the cat I'd had for years, her name was Panda. She was a black and white kitty. She was my ride or die. She wanted nothing to do with the kittens. She wasn't mean or aggressive, but she was just like, leave me alone, kittens. Like, you've got kitten energy. I do not. And so it ended up though that they're like, oh, well, conveniently, Sonny, the little boy, had a bonded sister that two
Hmm.
cats that were born in the same litter. I forget what her name was, but we changed her name to Stormy because she's got a very sort of like reserved personality, and it worked out fantastic. They were like, if you're gonna get one, you really should get two. But they were being serious. They're like, you have an older cat, and it's the only other animal in the house. The young kitten's gonna want to play with a friend, and if the older cat's not gonna want to engage. And so it's like best if you get the two because then they can play with each other and leave the older cat alone, which is exactly what played out. So it seems kind of cheesy, like you should adopt two, but it actually worked out perfect because the two of them kept each other company. They realized very quickly the older kitty didn't want to interact with them at all, and so they're like, cool, and they just went off and did their own thing. And my cat Panda would just be over here doing her thing, and it actually worked out really, really good. So
So are they living in separate rooms all the time?
so those two cats we've had for they're almost 2 years old, if not, no, they are 2 years old. We've had them since they were about 8, 9 weeks or whatever
Mhm.
the time is we could adopt them. This kitty, her name is Sabine. She's sitting over in the kitty tree here. She was actually a stray that we adopted about 2 months ago in the
Hmm.
neighborhood because we actually did adopt a third cat this year,
Okay.
and they're all indoor cats. But she got out, and we could never find her. Put up posters and signs. There's been no sign of her anywhere. No one's reported her back. It's been
No.
7 months, and so we're like, this is too bad. And that was it. We're like, okay, well, we're done. And then we started getting reports that there was a black cat in the neighborhood that looked very much like our other cat. We're like, that's not ours. But then when my wife went to go meet the kitty, this cat just came right up to my wife on the street and just sat in her lap, started purring and wanted pets. And we're like, I guess the cat distribution system says we need a cat. So we brought her home. She's the sweetest kitty in the world to people, but she's
Hmm.
not happy with the other cats, and the other cats are not happy with her. So largely we keep her upstairs and just in an area so that we like keep it closed off. And when I'm in meetings and things like this and no one else is home, I keep her in my office here with me because then she can just rub on my legs and have a good time. But she doesn't, if she's downstairs with other cats, she tries to kind of antagonize them. And it's like, no.
They're having lightsaber battles. So
Exactly. Very aggressive, or as Padme Amidala would call it, aggressive negotiations. That's what's happening.
tell me the backstory of your compass tattoo.
Oh, this one. I got it when I moved. So being at Cisco roughly 9 years, about 4 years ago, I moved from technical sales over into the developer program called DevNet. And when I did that, or when I got that job, I went. I mean, I have lots of tattoos, but I got this. It was the first hand tattoo I did ever got, and I'd been wanting to get one for a very long time, but I just couldn't figure out the right time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to yet, or if I wanted to have a tattoo exposed in that way, stuff like that. Just a lot of like mental things I was going through, like to try to decide when do I want to have something that is that. I mean, I have tattoo sleeves, but that's easy to cover up with a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah.
This you can't. Anyway, when I got the role in DevNet, I got the compass as I had the artist design it for me, or asked her to design it for me, and the idea for me was it felt like a complete pivot in my career. Most of my career I spent being a network administrator or network architect, doing that type of work, and people leaders, things of that nature. But when I went into DevNet and went to developer relations, I kind of stepped away from that type of work and really doubled down on the idea of being a people leader, and then doing community activities, running developer advocacy, all that type of stuff. And so it was just a big pivot for me. And so I got the compass as the idea for myself that a compass doesn't tell you where to go. All a compass does is tell you where the directions are. So if you're looking at a map and you're trying to figure out which direction to go, the compass can reinforce for you what the directions are, but you have to decide where to go. You have to make the decision of the next step. So I got the compass for myself as like, I don't know what my next step is. Clearly, I moved into this role and I had no thoughts ever that I would do this type of work. But then I figured out very quickly that I absolutely adored it. And I'm like, well, this is great. So I got the compass just as a way to remind myself that you never really know where you're going next, but you do need tools and friends and relationships to help guide you on what you want to be doing next, whether you know what that thing is going to be yet or not.
I'm curious, how tattoos help you to represent the real you?
I mean, for me personally, they are exactly what you just asked. I don't know that there's a better way to explain it other than they are the outward representation of the things that go through the spaghetti mess of my brain. Like, this is literally just who I am. So when you see things like literally, I don't know if it's going to show up backwards on camera, but right hand, left hand, this is Arabesh. This is the made up language in Star Wars. It literally says the word Star Wars. So it literally says Star Wars on my knuckles. It's just, these are, I mean, this is the other hand. This is my compass. This hand is a Star Wars tattoo. I've got multiple Star Wars tattoos, but they're outward representations of points in time, things that I've done, things I don't have a great memory, so I don't do it for that reason, but it's kind of like, this is just the representation of the person that I am. And it's sort of why I have even like the background in my office that I have. When I've had people ask me that, they're like, oh, do you do all kinds of video stuff? I'm like, no, these are just me. These are just the things that I do. And so having them on camera for me is almost and having tattoos is almost a way to subtly or not so subtly tell other people this is who I am. Because oftentimes I don't know how to say it out loud, or I feel very self-conscious in a lot of situations. Even if I seem outgoing when I meet somebody or I'm on camera and I'm like, Jeff, you seem very comfortable. It's like, yeah, you can be both extroverted and introverted in a lot of different ways. And oftentimes I'm very introverted and like, I don't know how to talk to people in certain situations because I'm just going through something. And so I find that the tattoos or a space like this represents who I am. So someone can already kind of get to know who I am without having to necessarily vocally engage with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like visible kind of instruction of like,
sure,
oh,
yeah.
this is who I am. Yeah, get to know me better. If you want to talk, let's talk. But here is like the representation. Yeah, it's an interesting way to think about this. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm curious, how many days of the year are pizza days?
I mean, every day is a pizza day. I have a pizza oven. I make pizza dough and I make pizza sauce. So like every day is a pizza day if you want it to be.
But like, for you, like how many really days?
Really? Sometimes we buy pizza. I make pizza probably a dozen to 2 dozen times a year, at least, if not more. And friends now know that I have a small pizza oven and my neighbor has a pizza oven. He loves doing it. And so regularly friends will invite neighbors, we're invited to their house, kids go swimming, and we'll both bring our pizza ovens over and we'll make pizzas for everybody. That is a very common occurrence in this neighborhood. So nowadays, it's probably twice a month that we're making pizzas, and probably eat pizza more often than that because, I mean, pizza. I will say, though, I will say this, tacos represent, because tacos far more often than pizza, because I mean tacos.
Yeah, it is. But I'm curious, what is the difference between homemade pizza in a pizza oven and pizza that you order?
Oh, everything. Like literally everything. I mean, I can't even go into the level of detail of how much better it tastes to have pizza that you make yourself. it sounds complicated for most people, and it's not, but it's baking. All baking requires a little bit of science and patience, so it is out of reach in some ways for people who don't have the space or time or energy to do it. But I mean, once you do it once, it's like, oh my God, this is easy. And the dough, it just tastes so much better. It just does. Unless you go to a really nice place that has a great pizza oven, like a restaurant, what have you, and there are plenty of them and make great pizzas. The stuff you buy at the store, the stuff you get from a delivery place, you make it at home one time and it cooks and it's bubbly and it's big poofy bubbles on your dough. It's like it's not. It is just you can't even compare the two things.
I have a previous guest question for you. So, what is something that you are an expert in that the average person isn't?
That's a hard question to answer because I don't consider myself an expert in anything.
Hmm.
I don't even like to use the word expert personally.
What are you good at?
What am I really good at? Talking a lot. No.
That counts. But yeah,
Sure.
continue. Please go on.
I would say that something I'm really passionate about talking about a lot. I'm not an expert in, but that I am a big nerd about is the idea of crossing over human psychology and workspaces and how the effect they all have on our lives day to day. It's probably my biggest passion area that if I could really go back to school and just like if I had no other things I had to worry about and I could just go back to school, not for the purpose of getting a degree, just do it, I would go back for like organizational psychology. I'm really passionate and excited about the idea of how much of an impact the spaces around us, home, work, and the third place, whatever that third place is, and outdoor spaces have on our psyche and how we behave every day. But then how to understand what to do with that information when you have it. I would not call myself an expert, but I do love to talk about it and love to hear about those types of things from other people and like discuss the impacts and what it could be, places we can rethink things. It's probably one of my favorite areas. I mean, I've really dove in also to being a people leader. Like I love doing that type of work. I love doing community work, and I love the career path that I'm on now. In that, however, my favorite part of any of those things is I say people leader not because I want to just simply lead, but because I like supporting others. I like, as Simon Sinek would say, as a leader, your job is to care for the people under you, not do the work. They do the things. You care for the people who do the things. That's what I love. I absolutely love caring for the people who do the things and helping them so they can go be successful. It's the reason when I go to work every day, that's the reason I really do it. And whether it's me leading people on my own team or helping people in a community, like that's like gold for me.
By the way, do you receive daily notifications from Simon Sinek? Like he has this newsletters, you can
I
subscribe and you
did.
receive.
I used to. I don't
Okay.
anymore because I am terrible at clicking on because what I will do is I'll set it up with a person like him and Adam Grant and Angela Duckworth and whoever else, and then I'll never click on them because I have so many that my brain can't focus on all of them, and then I just don't click on anything. So I'm like, I don't do that. But whenever I have the thought, then I go down a rabbit hole and like hyper focus for 4 hours, and then I bounce off again.
Yeah, I'm just asking because I'm receiving them and like sometimes it's right to the point. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I will think about it. So
Yeah.
it always depends. And Jeff, I really wish to have the sky's the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. So, beer or coffee?
Beer with coffee in it.
Star Wars book or Star Wars movie?
Book.
What are your favorite color and song?
Color and song. Purple. And right now, my favorite song is Steam Breather by Mastodon.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Manipulate energy.
Who do you learn from? Name just one person.
Adam Grant.
Name two people whom I should definitely reach out to and have this conversation with.
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. Stacy Kruchek and Cecilia Martinez.
Ask it forward. It's like pay it forward, but with questions. So ask a question a future guest will have to answer.
I know I have to have a prop. Notebook for notes or digital?
Got it. Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Um, no, I think you asked all the one. I mean, the one question I answered for you, but you didn't explicitly ask was how many lightsabers do you have, Jeff? Or really, how many lightsabers does one need? To which the answer is all of them. Duh.
Yeah, yeah. When I was preparing for this conversation, I saw a TikTok where it was a voice like, "Hey, do you have a lightsaber? Can I be your friend?" So I totally get it.
I like that.
And yeah, yeah, Jeff, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I met you here and there in between two work hours, and I was like, oh, we need to talk. Like I kind of like this Jeff guy, and exactly how you explained, with tattoos and the background, and I didn't really have to talk to you a lot to understand that I want to get to know you better. So you kind of like already showcased yourself, and yeah, it was so nice for me to get to know you just a little better on a human level, and I still have so many questions. So who knows? Get ready for the volume 2 one day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And yeah, see you at between two water coolers and in the community world.